This episode is brought to you by the Pip Box. Hi and welcome to today's episode, which is going to be all about experimenting with making tempeh. Tempeh is an Indonesian product made from fermented soybeans, and you can buy it in the shops. It comes in blocks like this. I've been buying it from my local supermarket. It's just one of your bog standard high street supermarket. So I was pleasantly surprised to see the vegan kind of selection growing. The problem with buying things from supermarkets is they all come in plastic, and I'm trying to minimise my plastic use because it's just out of control. But it's really difficult, so doing what I can when I can. I have made it before, and it's a bit of a lengthy process, but very simple and easy to do. It just takes time because you've got to ferment it for 24 hours. The key ingredient is Rhizopus Oligosporus, which is a type of mould. And what happens is the mycelium of the mould grows around the bean and then forms a network that then becomes the cake, and it holds everything together nice and tightly. I've made it once before and I used turtle beans to do it, but because the house can be a little bit cool, well, a lot cool, unless it's the middle of summer, I don't think I got quite enough mould growth to fully bind it together, so it was a little bit crumbly, but very tasty. But then I looked on fullofplants.com and they used an instant pot on the yoghurt setting because that holds it at the perfect temperature. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to try it in a dehydrator because that again maintains a steady heat. Yes, that's what we're going to do today. I bought fresh starter because the last batch I had was about a year old, and I think it only keeps 5 to 6 months. So I thought, just to be on the safe side, I'll buy more. And I got mine from eBay. That is 50 grams. Yes, £3 or something like that. And you can I think, get it in Asian supermarkets as well, so it's worth keeping an eye out. And this one says inoculum on it, so I think that's what you can also look for, or just look for tempeh starter. I'm going to make 2 different kinds today. One is going to use chickpeas for the main substrate, and the other one is going to use cowpeas because that's what I've got in the cupboard. And then I'm going to add some nuts and seeds and grains into it. In here I'm cooking some pearled spelt. So it's a little bit like barley, but slightly nuttier maybe. And then in this one I've got black rice. It's also, you might see it, purple rice or forbidden rice. Last time I made it, I used Ziploc bags and punched loads of holes in, which I'm going to do today as well. But I wanted to test drive doing a more reusable kind of manufacturing process. In many takeaways in the UK, food comes in these plastic tubs. So last night I sat watching Grey's Anatomy and punched a load of holes through it using an awl, like a little stabbing device. So I'm going to try making it in these. I'm going to put a cup of dried chickpeas into the Instant Pot. It's about 200 grams. My cup measures are wrong, but this doesn't by any stretch need to be hard and fast. Giving the chickpeas a good rinse with cold water, just to get off any lingering nasties. And I've covered them with a fair amount of water, just cold water, because these will swell up kind of 2 or 3 times their size. And I just don't want there to be too little water. I'm using the bean setting on mine. I'm going to do these for 20 minutes. We've been blessed by a visit. Hello, Cleo. There she is. Hey? My old girl. I'll do one of each kind of tempeh in a tub in the Instant Pot, and then I've got 2 Ziploc bags, so I'm going to punch holes in these and then use these ones in the dehydrator one. This is the awl that I used to punch the holes. And here's the spelt. You can see how much it swells as it cooks. So I'll drain it, set that and let it drain. With both of them I put cold water in and then brought it up to the boil and then timed 20 minutes from once it started boiling. So I'll check on the black rice. Giving the black rice another 5 minutes because it's still a little bit chalky. And I'll punch the holes. I'm using a block of styrofoam. It's just the stuff that comes usually with electronic appliances, just to make it less likely that I stab my fingers. And then just pop a hole through. So that's what you want. Sort of every inch or so. Doesn't need to be exact. The black rice had another 5 minutes and it's now perfect. So it's got a nice bit of bite to it, but it's not chalky as you crunch on it. So I'll give that a drain. Look at that colour. I'll leave these in the sieves just to help release as much moisture as possible. There are many different ways of cooking both the rice and the grain, the spelt. And when I looked online, someone recommended doing the pasta method for the black rice to stop it going soggy. I've done this in the Instant Pot on the rice cooker and it did go very sticky, which was nice, but I would have preferred single little grains like that. So I'll see you back once the chickpeas are done. Chickpeas are done. I'll let them vent for about 15 minutes, just natural vent, and that keeps them cooking a tiny bit because there's lots of heat in there. So I'm just going to release the rest of the steam. Open up and pray for the best. So you can see the size difference is considerable. I'm going to rinse 1 cup of cowpeas. It's about 220 grams. So that's the cowpeas. Drain the chickpeas. So now add the cowpeas to the Instant Pot. Again, just cover them in a good amount of water. This time I'm going to do it for 15 minutes, just because they're very small and I don't want to overcook them. I can always finish it off on the top of the stove. Bloody hell. I'm going to leave these in the strainer just so the moisture can release. And then I think I might crush them down a little bit, because if they're too big, the mould has a much bigger gap to fill. So I think having smaller pieces will be a good idea. If you're making traditional tempeh with soybeans, it's advised to remove the shells, the hulls I think they're called. But the recipe that I found for the chickpea tempeh doesn't say to do that, so I think it should be okay. And these are much finer. The skins are much softer than a soybean shell. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you'll need to soak the beans overnight and then cook them on the stove for about 30 minutes or so. But I'll put the link to both the Chickpea Tempeh and the Instant Pot Tempeh in the description for you. And make sure to let me know in the comments what kind of beans and seeds and nuts and rices that you're going to try and make some tempeh with. Some of the chickpeas are a little bit, still a tiny bit hard inside, not unpleasantly so, but I'd maybe do 25 minutes. I think that would be about perfect. It's a fine line between mush and hard. Break the chickpeas down into smaller pieces. I've broken down most of them. I'm not too bothered if there's the odd few that are still whole. That's okay. Give a nice bit of a different texture inside. Time to start assembling the chickpea tempeh. So I've got the crushed chickpeas in a glass bowl. Do take some time to make sure everything's as clean as it possibly can be, just to minimise, any bad bacteria growing in there. So I'll add in these cooked spelt and a tablespoon of flaked almonds. I just broke the pieces down a little bit, so they're a bit finer. A tablespoon of chia seeds. And a tablespoon of white sesame. Then I'm adding a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Sprinkle that over. I think adding vinegar also helps inhibit bad bacteria. And I think that's enough. I can see an ever so slight sheen on them. And 2 teaspoons of tempeh starter. And then mix it together really well. Try and get it as evenly coated as you can. Once everything's evenly coated in the tempeh starter, in the Rhizopus, it's time to pack it. So again, this is a sterilised pot. And then pack it in really tight. I'm going to try and get it all in. So it means I'll only have the 1 batch of each, but that's okay. Let's see what we can do. So I've got it all in 1 tub rather than the 2 batches, which is a shame. But as a proof of concept, I think it's fine. So you can see there's very little gap at the top there. It's right up on the lid. So that's, it's like an 1.5 inch thick block. So I'll get 3 portions out of that maybe. Put that to the side. Clean everything down, and then we'll get on with the other one. So I've had a bit of a disaster with the cowpeas. 15 minutes was too long. We've gone very, very, very mushy. I'm transferring it into a sieve just to get as much moisture out as I can, and then just move them around. Goodness me. Of course something went wrong. I'm going to let them drain for I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And hopefully they'll dry out a little bit. I might have to put it in the oven because it can't really be wet, the tempeh, otherwise it's just going to rot. I've received another Pip Box, and this time it's their Sustainable Beauty edit. So there's lots of amazing products in here that are kind of eco-conscious, recyclable packaging, and the little leaflet also comes with some great tips on how to reduce energy consumption, that kind of thing. Got some Zero Eye Cream. That's great for putting on kind of the delicate skin around your eyes. You do need to be a bit careful with the stuff you put near your peepers. I have some Codex Hydrating Skin Superfood, and this is formulated to help soothe and ease dry and irritated skin. Organic Foot Balm, and this is a really rich kind of foot cream, and I actually used some of this on my feet last night because they were really hot and felt quite dry because I'd been on my feet in here for 9 hours. And it contains like a peppermint oil, so it really helps cool things down and just, yeah, helped feel a little bit like a cuddle on my feet. Some Lucky Cloud Super Balm, and this is again for really dry skin. So I've been using it on my lips, and also because I lean on my elbows when I'm working, so it's great for chapped elbows. So if you've been using your hands a lot and you've got a lot of dry skin that's getting a bit sore, pop a bit of that on. And this one is orange, sweet orange and cocoa. It smells amazing, and I need to stop licking it all off my lips. And I've got some of these from the Vintage Cosmetics Company. I am absolutely blown away. Okay, what they are is a makeup removing cloth. All you do is wet it and it takes all your makeup off. You don't need to use any product. So not only is that great from a sustainability point of view, but if you travel a lot and you need to keep your liquids down because you're only allowed 100 mils, you just need that instead of carrying big bottles of product. I'm going to put a little insert in for you. So once I'd finished shooting yesterday, I used this to get it off, and I deliberately put on liquid eyeliner so that, because that can be a bit of a nightmare to take off, and it worked really, really, really well, like really well. You've got two options with the Pip Box. You can either buy a one-off box, or you can sign up to their monthly subscription service, and they curate lots of great products for you and just ship them out. So it's a bit of a surprise every month what you're going to get. Sometimes it's pampering, sometimes it's sustainability, sometimes it's well-being. So there's all kinds of different themes each month. The boxes are available worldwide, so don't worry, it's not just a UK brand, a UK company. So why not head over to thepipbox.co.uk and use code Rachel25 to get 25% off your order. Okay, so I dried the beans for half an hour. It's hopefully worked okay. Nice and dry now, with a little powdery. So it's time to start adding in the other bits and pieces. So I've got a 1/4 cup of pumpkin seeds. It's about 30 grams. Broken them down to slightly smaller pieces. A tablespoon of black sesame seeds. And then a tablespoon of nigella seeds. The taste and aroma of these is kind of hard to define, but it's maybe a little bit like celery, but not really. But they've got a really lovely fragrance to them. And then just like last time, sprinkle over a tablespoon and a half of apple cider vinegar. And give it a really good mix together. And again, 2 teaspoons of the Rhizopus. And stir well. Pack it into my tub with the lid on, press down really hard, really compact it in there. So I've got my 2 tubs, both ready to go in the Instant Pot. So let's scoot over there. Bit of water at the bottom. Put one in, put a rack on top, and then place the other one in. And then I'm using a lid from a different pot. Hopefully that should be okay. So we're using the yogurt setting, and we're going to press it 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 24 hours. And that should keep it at 30 degrees. And then I'll keep coming and periodically checking it and topping it up with water if I need to. So it's 11:15 in the evening. I'm going to go and do some more work and then head to bed. So I'm going to check on the Instant Pot, see how it's looking. So there is still water at the bottom, so that's good. Doesn't seem to be any noticeable mold growth, although there is something there. could be, but then again, it could be a chickpea skin. I wiped away excess moisture from the inside of the lid, just in case that causes any condensation build-up in the boxes. Good morning. It's 10:30 a.m, so let's have a little look at the Instant Pot. It's quite hard to tell. So we've got some tufts on the bottom one. We're at 30 hours now, so let's have a little check. Definitely happening now. And I can smell it as well. So it is a little bit boozy, almost a bit like beer. And I did read that rice can do that, but then it's also got an aroma similar to when bread starts to turn. It's got that kind of fermented vibe to it. So it is solid. So I loosen the sides and I've just inverted them onto the lids. I've washed my hands very well. I think that might actually be okay. It feels very firm and cake-like. Yeah, very dense. Interesting. So I'm going to put them in the fridge overnight, and cooling it is going to stop the Rhizopus from growing anymore. It's time to test the tempeh. Well, there's a tongue twister for you, isn't it? When I went to bed last night, I had another quick check through the full of plants recipe and realised that I'd misread the recipe again. I've been quite stressed the last couple of days. The first thing to go when I'm stressed is my attention and my ability to absorb detail. What the recipe said was to put it in the Instant Pot for 16 hours and then turn it off and leave it for 24 hours inside the Instant Pot. And somehow I skipped over the turn off part and put it back on for another, well, I put it on for 24, but it stayed in for 6. So we had 30 hours in the Instant Pot altogether. Once the Rhizopus has started growing properly, that creates heat. So I think leaving it in the Instant Pot, because it's an insulated unit, that kind of holds the heat. So really it was excessive to have the heat on as well. But Instant Pots work with a thermostat, so I'm hoping that, you know, it kind of sensed it didn't need to be on much of the time. So the original recipe method takes 40 hours in the Instant Pot, whereas this took 30. So I guess it's a kind of, you know, weighing it up for yourself which way you want to do it. I'll try doing it their way next time. But on to checking. I wrapped it in plastic bags. These are from a grocery delivery I had, and they still use plastic. Oh, the irony, I know. Just because I'm putting it in the fridge, and I don't know, I just thought maybe it's best to protect the rest of the stuff that's in the fridge from any potential mold growth, and also because it has got a bit of a fragrance, I didn't want to necessarily permeate the inside of the fridge with a funky, boozy, yummy smelling product. Anyway, I can give the bags a rinse, give them a wash, and then just let them dry and reuse those for future things. My freezer is crammed full of bits and pieces that are in plastic bags, so it's not like I'm going to put them straight in the bin or anything. So this is where we're at, and you can see the white that is surrounding everything. That is the Rhizopus mould. I give my hands a really good wash with washing up liquid because I want to really minimise the amount of cross-contamination or anything like that. I'll look at the chickpea one first. So it's holding its texture really, really well. Same with this one. And I'll slice into these. It's very firm. I did have a suspicion that might happen. So it's very crumbly. And I think the reason for that is that because I packed it in so tight, the mould hasn't had much space to kind of grow. You can see it, you know, in places. But I think, yeah, don't pack it in as tight. Give the mould some room to do its business. Yeah, this one feels more solid. Whereas this one has a slight bit of give. I can feel it kind of flexing as I pick it up. But it's still holding its structure very well. I've been warming my cast iron pan with some oil in the bottom. I'll chuck those slices in and have a nom on them. we'll do it a few minutes each side. Just going to keep an eye, probably flip them every 2 minutes maybe. Cut those into 3 blocks. And I'm now going to steam them for about 20 minutes. It's holding its shape brilliantly as it cooks. I kind of feared, especially this one, that it would fall apart, but no. My fears are unfounded. I had a quick look at the original recipe to see if I could figure out why I'd seen a note about steaming it before freezing it. And they said it can help remove some bitterness, but they don't usually bother. So I'm going to do these ones without steaming it, just bang it straight in the freezer. I'll wrap it up in little grease-proof paper parcels and yeah, and then pull them out and thaw them before I want to eat it. I will dive into these. I'll go with the chickpea one first, just because the flavour's probably going to be a bit milder. And you can see how well that's holding up. That's amazing. Very creamy and slightly nutty. That's delicious. I mean, it's quite a bland product apart from some very subtle, wonderful flavours. But that's just going to be amazing smothered in sauce. You could slice that up and even marinate it in a barbecue sauce and then chuck it on the grill. That'll be banging. Yes. All right. And there isn't any of the boozy flavour that I've seen a couple of people say that can happen with rice tempeh. Try the darker one. That does have a very faint alcoholic sort of taste to it, but very mild. You know, like if you made a stew or a casserole with beer in it, that sort of vibe. It's not slapping around the chops or anything. That's delicious. And there's loads of different textures in there, which are really nice as you chew through it. So you've got some chew from the rice, and then you've got some crisp bits from the seeds, and then creaminess from the beans. I'm so pleased with these. Yes. So I'm definitely going to be experimenting more with this, buying loads of random beans and rices, grains, more seeds that I've not tried before. When I come to do the edit, I'll try and work out rough costings so you get an idea of, you know, how much it costs to make versus buying a pack of it. But from just as a rough guesstimate, I definitely think this is cheaper. You know, the small block I showed you at the beginning, that was £3. And I'd say it's probably £3 for that amount. So that's kind of 3 times the amount. If you'd like to see what's next on my journey into the world of moulds, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon, and that way you won't miss any.